Okay, here we fucking go, buddy.
Yeah, what's up, guys? Welcome back. Welcome to 2025. It's been a while. It's been a couple months, actually, since I last posted, but here I am again. I have been slowly but steadily working towards getting that demo done, so let me catch you up and show you where I am at. The first thing I worked on was making the whole demo fully playable from start to finish with all content included, which meant implementing the transitions between each level, as well as every line of dialogue and all of the scripted cutscenes and choices you can make. As I've been watching the game's wishlist numbers growing, I've noticed that a significant number of our wishlists are coming from Japan and Spanish-speaking countries, which is pretty cool, as well as many others, so I also made sure to set up localization support for everything, although actual localization might have to happen after the game's release because it's probably going to be expensive and I won't have any money left, so I'll have to use the revenue from sales of the game to fund that. We also added these little character cards to introduce characters when they first appear in the game. I do still have to spice up the effects on that a bit though. I added a mini game for when you're chilling at Jones's bar. I added a pause menu, also fleshed out the main menu, both of which now include fully functional settings. You can adjust the screen shake in there for people who bitched about that, and you can rebind all your controls. Finally, last time I showed you guys a rough draft of the game's map, which I mainly wanted to use for the chapter select screen. Here is the final version, and here is my work in progress on the actual chapter select screen in-game. Originally I wanted to put markers on the map, showing where each level is and then you hover over them, but I didn't like how it covered up all the art, plus it could be annoying when you're trying to find a specific level, so I'm going with this indexed version instead, where you just directly pick the part and chapter you want, and then I'm going to make a marker appear at the appropriate spot on the map. And then as you can see, an extra window pops up with more info about the level, and we're going to add a blueprint drawing of the level you've selected in that window as well. That's what the white box is a placeholder there for. So this upcoming week I'm hoping to finish that screen and then make sure that the game is also fully playable with a controller, and then do some bug fixing and polishing, and hopefully by next week I can jump into producing the rest of the music that the demo is going to need. And while I was working on all of that, my artist and animator Amanda and Maria were moving ahead and doing a whole bunch of stuff, most of which is outside the scope of the demo. So first of all, we've got all of the rooms for levels 5, 6, 7, and 8, which is just about all the levels for the game's first act. We have more animations for the Archer, the game's third enemy. We have the first couple of animations for the game's first boss, Goman, who I introduced in the last video. An animation for Dahlia, another character I introduced last time. I'm not going to spoil what's going on here though. Animations for Genyu and the player petting Spike, and perhaps most interesting of all, we started figuring out the aesthetic for the game's second act. So first up we have the first enemy type of the second act, who I've called the Blocking Swordsman. The style we're going for in this act is a mix of a few different influences: 90s hip-hop culture and the Yakuza, a Neon Island feel, some mid-20th century jazz culture aesthetics, so kind of a mix of vintage Western and Japanese stuff and hip-hop that represents the more developed urban part of the game's fictional island. And then we have a template for the levels of the second act as well, which as you can see also follows a combination of vintage Western and island architecture and classy Yakuza-inspired interior decorating, and a more urban setting for the front outdoor area at the entrance. Keep in mind, these are just flat, put-together screenshots. It's not actually in-game, so it's missing all the cool lighting and post-processing effects that I'll be putting in later. And they're going to keep working ahead on all this, so you can expect to see the remaining enemy and boss designs for Act 2 real soon. I'm still going to try my hardest to have the demo out in February, but realistically, it's probably going to be closer to March. Now that I've brought you all up to speed, in celebration of the new year, I've decided that it is time to review my life. I have to get in the zone here. Okay, so 2.5 years ago, I moved to Montreal, and I had never been there before, and I didn't know anyone there, and I basically didn't tell anyone I was even going to do this, not most of my friends, and not even my own family. And so far, it has been definitely the best decision of my life. I felt like I had to do it in order to become the person that I always wanted to be. I felt like I had come to the conclusion that changing my environment was crucial to allowing myself to change in the ways that I wanted to change. And at least as far as I can tell, it seems like that turned out to be true. And it required making, honestly, a lot of really hard decisions as well about, well, obviously the hardest decision of just practically losing my entire old life since I no longer live near anyone that I ever grew up with or that I knew or anything like that. So it's pretty much like hitting the restart button on my whole life. But still, best decision I ever made, and I've accomplished so many things over these past few years in terms of meeting new people, going out, trying all kinds of different things. I'd been to more like concerts and shows and festivals and went out on more dates and explored the city and just absolutely everything. I also got into still like the best shape of my life, and obviously career-wise, I finished and released my first game. Now I'm making YouTube videos. I started making music for this second game, which I'm really happy with how that's going, and just like this whole second project in general seems extremely promising. It's pretty much as good as I could have hoped for anything to turn out. And what else did I do? Oh, yes. And also one of the biggest accomplishments of this year. In fact, this was my 2024 New Year's resolution, which is that I went all of 2024 without smoking any weed. I have been smoking weed since I was 14 years old, which is almost 2 decades. I'm 33 now. Saying that out loud is kind of nuts, realizing that, that I've basically been a drug addict for like 2 decades of my fucking life. Yeah, it's just crazy to think that this is like the first year in nearly 2 decades that I've gone without being pretty regularly in a different state of mind. So I'm extremely happy about that. And this last half a year, though, I found was actually pretty difficult, even if I've been really happy and excited about everything else going on in my life. And what I learned was that despite everything I had changed in my life, some of those old habits and the things that you really want to change about yourself to become like the version of yourself you really want to be are so ingrained in you that even when you think you've overcome them, you still probably haven't. I think I have a tendency to fall into a lot of old bad habits whenever I'm feeling bad about myself, I guess, is what I would expect is happening. For me, that looks like just ordering shit tons of junk food all the time. My sleep schedule was insane this past half a year. I was literally going to bed at like 7, 8, 10 in the morning and then waking up at like 5 in the evening. It's like, it was fucking crazy. And I got stuck in this cycle of doing this over and over again. And I didn't know why. It felt like overcoming that habit of basically being a pothead was such a huge step forward for me. And it felt like I was always on the edge of becoming the person I wanted to be in a consistent way, and not this sort of like back and forth that I felt like I was doing a lot of the time. But something was holding me back. It felt like I was always on the edge somehow, and I don't know. If I had to guess, I think it really sunk in how despite all of my successes here and how happy I am with everything, that I guess there was something really sad about having to move away from everything that I had grown up with in order to accomplish that. And I think at this point I think especially in these past 6 months or so, I felt like really lonely. I think one of the big mistakes that I made when I moved here was I've always had a tendency to stick with whatever is really comfortable. I have a friend, or had a friend back in that I grew up with, like in high school. Unfortunately, passed away in college. But I remember he always said to me that I was too much in my comfort zone. He was always like, "Matt, you gotta you gotta get out of your comfort zone. You're never trying anything new or anything like that." And when it came to meeting new people, I feel like I have a tendency to pick whoever the first people I meet are that I get along with. and that who I can talk to or whatever. Like if I go to a party, let's say, or there's a big group of people, oftentimes what I'll do is I talk to a bunch of different people until I meet some person who seems to like, yeah, like I get along with them. Not even like we bond necessarily or we even have a lot in common, but it's just like this person accepts me and they seem as interested in talking to me as I am in talking to them, which might sound normal, really. Like that's like I guess that's how you make friends. And I don't know if I'm making sense here, but there's something superficial about it. It's not like I feel like I've connected with this person. It's just sort of like, yeah, this person will talk to me, and then I just end up talking to just that person. And oftentimes I'm like never the one to end a conversation. I will just stick with that one person now I've gotten kind of friendly with, and I don't really bother to branch out anymore. And I feel like that was a big mistake I made when I came here, and that I ended up while I met a lot of people that I really liked by all means and that I considered friends and everything like that, it just felt like I had settled for just, you know, having anyone to hang out with. You know what I mean? And I don't know if this was even a good or a bad thing. Like, I don't really know even where I'm going with this, but other than to say that I find myself in a weird situation right now where after having moved away from everything that I grew up with and wanting to live my life in a different way, but still having some of these old attitudes and habits in me, that I still tend to kind of be attracted to a lot of the same kinds of people that I grew up with. But I'm in a different space mentally now. I'm like a different kind of person now, and I want to meet people who like challenge me more, I guess you could say. And that's what I wasn't really doing. And I also don't know how to even meet those people because I'm in this weird in-between stage where I'm just I haven't yet achieved the success or become the person I wanted to be exactly, but I'm no longer at all interested in living my life the way that I did for, well, most of my life. And I think because of that, I'm in this like weird middle place now where it's like I've left my whole old life and I'm trying to build this new one. But I don't yet know how to connect with the kinds of people who are, I don't know, in the same place with me, I guess. On top of that, I've also started to think a lot about, as messed up as it is, like how much I even really need friends. Like I've been a person who I've kind of gotten along being by myself for so much of my life, and like I've had a lot of friends growing up and whatnot. But I just mean that it's like beyond being an introvert. Like when COVID was going on and everyone was quarantined, I actually found myself excelling under those circumstances. Like not having to interact with anyone. That was a period where I really started to prepare myself for like quitting my job and finally going after my new career, which is what I always wanted to do and everything. And I actually did end up doing that. And it seems like I've always done my best when I'm all alone. And yet it seems extremely backwards, doesn't it? Like human beings evolved to be social. So it feels like one of those things that's like a weird side effect of things I experienced growing up that made me withdraw into myself and become overly self-reliant. So yeah, I don't know. When I think about not having the relationships or friendships yet that I wanted to have exactly, I'm also kind of like, I don't know, maybe I don't really need it. like it'd be nice to I don't know, meet someone to have a relationship with one day if that happens, if it's the right person. But outside of that, I'm kind of like, I don't know, maybe I made a mistake by trying to force myself into making new friends and whatnot. I don't know. I don't really even know where the fuck I'm going with this, to be honest. But the point of what I wanted to get at was really just that the past half a year or so was real fucked up for me. Yeah, I just felt like really lonely and sad in a lot of ways, and I dealt with that by indulging in all of my worst habits that I felt like I had overcome, and it made me realize that I still had a lot of the same problems and insecurities and certain character traits that I was trying to overcome within myself, and that I needed to something was still holding me back from being exactly who I want to be. However, after having successfully conquered my weed habit, which is a 2-decade-long habit that has given me great confidence that I can become exactly who I want to become, that I made the right decision ultimately in changing the circumstances of my life, and I've decided that for 2025, this is going to be the year of Solideo. So the moment 2025 hit, my new New Year's resolution, after having conquered the first one, is that I'm going to stick back to my daily routine that I want to do. I'm going to get back to the ideal lifestyle that I had originally envisioned and was trying to live when I first moved to Montreal, and which I did quite well with, at least initially. But now I'm armed with so much more experience and knowledge and understanding of myself in terms of recognizing where my weaknesses still lie, and in recognizing that, I guess, now it all of a sudden just hit me that I suppose when I first left my whole old life behind, I thought that I was already kind of over it and it wouldn't bother me, and I was so happy living this new life of mine and how awesome it is. But now I'm realizing, I think what happened is I was kind of just hiding away from it, and I was actually pretty sad about it. And that it only just now in the past 6 months or so, I realized that that old life was still with me a little bit. I was actually pretty sad about losing it, and that I think somewhere along the way that sadness was sitting deep inside of me somewhere, and I don't know, it was just a matter of time before it came out and prevented me from becoming who I wanted to become. It's like it took me down a path of that was actually away from the person I really wanted to be. I think the timeline was like this. I was doing really, really well, and then I increasingly, maybe to make up for that sadness in me, was like slowly drifting off into becoming a somewhat fake, or just not real, kind of fake, but just sort of inauthentic version of myself that I was trying to be somebody I wasn't. And then I got really sad because of that. And now it's sort of hit me all at once what that original vision I had was, and where I went wrong, and coming to terms with everything I've gone through over the past few years. All right, well, I don't know if any of that was of any use to you, but in the end, this is a review, so I'm going to go ahead all in all, and I'm going to give my life an 8 out of 10. Pretty good, but there's room for improvement. So thanks for watching, guys. I hope you'll join me again next time. Peace.